Order for the Village of Salado's regular Board of Aldermen meeting located at the Salado Municipal Building, 301 North Stagecoach, Salado, Texas. The date is April the 18th, 2024, and the time is currently 6:30. Mr. Manning, please call the roll.
Mayor and Alderman, all members are present, so you have a quorum.
All right, at this time we'll do the invocation. Please go to your Lord in prayer. Remember our country, our village, and please remember to pray for rain. All right, thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the Texas flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to these Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
I'd like to remind the board to please speak into your microphone tonight. At this time, we'll do citizen communications. The Board of Aldermen welcomes comments from citizens and issues of concern not on the agenda. Those wishing to speak should sign in before the meeting begins. You have 3-minute opportunity to speak during this time, and please speak directly to the Board of Aldermen. So at this time, we will call people who have registered. Mr. Boynton.
Jim Boynton, 3565 FM 2843 Salado. I told one of the aldermen tonight that Jason Graham, I told him I was going to say one thing positive for sure. And what I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, as hard as it was for you to vote to censor the mayor, I want to compliment you on doing the hard thing and the right thing. This week in the newspaper, I saw a whole list of folks that are all excited and voted to support somebody who's not been doing the right thing for our community. They voted and put their name in a big deal. People come up here every week and tell y'all how bad the former city manager was, how bad the mayor's treated them, how bad they want y'all to come look at something and nobody ever comes to look at it. It is a bad thing. I talk to people in the community. It's a sad thing that when we're running for election, everybody wants to let everybody know that they have a church affiliation. One of the things I've heard a lot, and I've spoken to a couple of deacons at First Baptist, they call it the Baptist connection. That doesn't speak well for what's been going on. One of the deacons acknowledged to me that he had been discriminated against. He knew some unethical things were going on. He knew that Don was doing unethical things and was falling on deaf ears. I don't know who's letting that go on. I do know that we had 3 people voting in unison to support that most of the time. That can't keep going on. We're going to bankrupt our city. But the bigger problem is I'm talking to this deacon, and I start telling him what's going on, and he said, you're right, you're right, you're right. I said, so when you don't go down there and step up and stand up and say so, that makes you a huge hypocrite. He said, guilty as charged. I'm not going down there to speak up. Folks, they had a saying back then, years in the 90s, WWJD. What would Jesus do? Would Jesus deny people services? Would they let people file you know, bogus lawsuits against people speaking out against corruption. No, but we have a whole list of people that bought an ad in the newspaper to support the corruption that's been going on. That is shameful. I saw online. I saw another picture of a council member butted up to a bus, giving them hell. That's not a good look for this council. Brian Lehman down on South by. Oh, is that it?
That's it. Thank you
I
very
won't
much.
tell you what Brian Lehman told me about the corruption.
Thank you
on
very
the tech.
much. All right, Miss Darlene Walsh, you're next.
Hello, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alderman. Can you hear me? Okay, didn't sound like it was reverberating. There you go. Darlene Walsh, 1001 Mill Creek Drive. I previously addressed the board April the 4th concerning the proposed new village police station and office building. I may have confused this board a little bit because the minutes from that meeting that you're about to approve only mentions my suggestion to renovate the buildings. While we do not believe that my husband and I do not believe the new village office building is necessary at this time, we do agree that the police station needs an upgrade. It needs to be upgraded. And my suggestion as far as the police station is concerned is that the board locate land to build a new station on, or that the existing building be demolished and a new two-story building be completed. If a new two-story building on the present 35 frontage road location were built, it could include a rooftop billboard advertising current and upcoming events in town, and that would save advertising the village tourism about $50,000 a year, or in 10 years, $500,000. So it's a great spot to be right on 35 and to be able to advertise without paying for regular billboard fees. Anyway, Mike and I have spoken with Mr. De La Rosa concerning our willingness to donate a building to the village police to move to during construction if you chose to demolish and build on site. And so that's what I wanted to say, and I thank you. We want the best only for the village. Thank you.
All right, next to register is Miss Lewis.
Hi, Mayor, Alderman Ashley Lewis, 534 Santa Clara Road. So I am here just to read a police report. This is Salado Police Report, case number 88. It was filed on March 1st. It states, at 9:39 a.m., and this is from Officer Oster's point of view. At 9:39 a.m., I was called back to the Visitor Center where I met with Ashley and Peter McNeil, who is the IT person with Extraco that is contracted with the Village of Salado to complete IT work for the city. Peter informed me that when he checked out Ashley's computer and found the PC was unplugged, the cables on the back of the phone were switched, the date and the time on the PC were set back 24 hours, and the phone was forwarded to City Hall. Peter was able to plug in the PC and switch the cables, causing the telephone to start to work, and the computer came on. Peter was able to set the correct date and time on the PC and fix the telephone. Peter was able to say that the computer went offline at 6:28 p.m. the evening before on February 29th. The alarm company to the museum gave the following information on the police report. The alarm to the museum was deactivated at 6:18 p.m. and then it was activated again at 6:42 p.m. That is a 24-minute span. Also, in the police report, it states that a local business was able to pull camera footage from the visitor center at 6:17 p.m. when they noticed a black Jeep Renegade pull up to the back of the visitor center and then leave at 6:43 p.m. And so this police report was filed. We know that that person has left, and then a few days later, I found out that our village administrator, my boss had hired that person's spouse. And so I made an appointment to come over here to meet with our village administrator, my boss, and he would not even see me. And I felt frustrated, and that is why I quit.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lewis. Would anybody else care to speak? Mr. Kelly? That's all right.
I see several new faces on the board, and my name is Troy Kelly. This is my wife, Vicki. We're both sculptors, and we live here in Salado. I'm here tonight to discuss the plans of moving the Serena Fest to Belton, and I read about it in the paper. So I don't understand why that's happening, but I want to bring you up to date on a little bit of history of Serena. I came to Salado in 1984. When I crossed the bridge down there and saw that spring, I knew it would be ideal to put Serena in that creek. So I went to the Chamber of Commerce and asked them for a little money to do it. They didn't know what I was talking about. So anyhow, I bought some water meters from Lonnie Edwards. We melted them down and created Serena the sculpture. The sculpture is a piece that is site specific. It's got to be near water to be appreciated. So that's the reason that I can't understand the movement to go to Belton. So I'm calling on people to reconsider what position they've made and to form a group that will look at the impact that the festival has on Salado. There's quite a bit of money that takes place, and I think that Salado could use it. So anyhow, that's what we're up to. I would like to speak with anybody. My name is Troy Kelly. P.O. Box 301, Salado. Vicki, would you like to say something, please? Vicki has some drawings here that we'll pass around of when I did that in the clay and showed it to Grace Jones. A lot of people know who Grace Jones was. And she said, put it in the creek. And by golly, we put it in the creek. And she said so. Any questions? Okay, also, I've done the Vietnam Memorial. It's in the cemetery on 195. I just finished a Vietnam Memorial for Houston. I did the Christ figure that's in front of the Methodist Church. I did Billy Goat Gruff that's on the walking bridge. Did a couple of more, and I can't remember which one. Okay. Well, I'll leave it. Thank you all very much for listening to us, and look forward to working with you.
All right, Troy, thank you. All right, would anybody else care to speak? Item number 2 is the consent agenda. Approval of all the financial statements for the Village of Salado. B, approval of the minutes of the Board of Aldermen meeting on April the 4th, 2024. Any questions to Mr. Manning?
Hey, Manning. Ms. Darlene Watts brought up an issue with recorded minutes grateful for. Based on her comments and the recommendations from staff that we pull that agenda item, go back and review the records to make sure the minutes are reflected correctly.
Alderman, if the board feels that it's appropriate to pull it, then that's the recommendation.
Thank you.
Would anybody care to present a motion?
We'll make a motion to approve consent agenda item A. We will pull item B and minutes to reflect the correctness.
Or do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Graham. Any discussion?
Question.
Question is called by Alderman Graham. All in favor of the motion as presented, say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. That carries 5-0. Item number 3 is, nothing was removed. Item number 4 is A, the village administrator's report. Mr. Manning?
Mayor and Alderman, before we move on to the first item, which is the sales tax collection, I have Solomon Thomas here with MRB Group, our city engineer. I'd like to go over the second item, which is the rain, hailstorm, and stormwater event on April the 9th. I've had quite a few inquiries, not only from citizens that sent me emails, but also some of you that have sent me about the rain events, the storm events that we have, and the flooding in our area. So I think it's best that the city engineer address that item.
All right, Manny asked me to kind of address some of the questions that came in. The majority of the questions came in about basically regarding the type of event we had and what the Stagecoach and Chisholm Trail improvements should be able to handle. So I did a little research on the storm event, and these numbers are based on information from the village. So what I did is I went to NOAA, which is the national, anyways, it's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric something. But basically they have for all different areas what type of storm events based on the duration and the amount of rain. And so I was reported there was about 4 inches of rain in a 60-minute and an hour. So a storm event of 3.75 inches in an hour is a 50-year storm. A 4.21 inches in an hour is a 100-year storm. So based on that information, it looks like the storm event that y'all experienced was somewhere between a 50 and 100-year storm event. And so I went back and researched our records on the proposed options for drainage improvements to Stagecoach and Chisholm Trail. And so on Stagecoach and Chisholm Trail, one of the main issues was on Stagecoach Circle, there was houses kind of on both sides of a drainage that was experiencing pretty regular inundation of water. And so part of the relief was to actually give them a relief around Stagecoach, so not as much water was going between their houses. And then the other main concern, at least from an engineering perspective, was the last culvert on the driveway culverts down Chisholm Trail. It was one 24-inch pipe, and so we had bigger pipes coming into that smaller pipe. And so that existing capacity at the downstream location of that one was 21 CFS. And so this project brings our capacity in those ditches about 3 times what it was previously. But as we mentioned early in this, a 2-year storm is about 99 CFS. And so what we're doing is relieving very minor storms from coming into those properties on a regular basis. And so while we're tripling the amount of water that can get through there, it's still not able to carry the amount of water that's dropped during a 50 or 100-year storm. And so I know we got a lot of pictures and questions just about the amount of water that they saw. It's still getting up near the houses. And then the other thing I was looking and reminding myself is that there's at least 5 houses along that stretch that are in the actual waterway of this stream. And so as we presented on, if y'all, I think Manny may have sent that out to y'all as a different option. The only way to really provide major relief for those houses is actually to divert the water from that area to somewhere else. The culverts in that area and the ditches just don't have the capacity to carry major storms. I mean, they can probably carry 1 to 2 year storm now with the improvement. Prior to the improvement, they weren't even carrying a 1 year storm. And so and a 1 year storm means there's a 99% chance it happens in a year. So, the other questions came in. We had some questions on Drake's Landing. Water was experienced coming into those inlets. We did send inspection out there to see why water wasn't getting in there. They had their silt fence to protect silt from getting in there. And so stormwater control measures, what they do is they slow water down so the silt will drop out before it goes into your drainage structure. So that appears to be the issue on that one. I would say more than anything else, y'all experienced a very large volume of water in a very short period of time, which appears to be the main reason for seeing water throughout the village.
So, the big problem that is still across the interstate, is that right? Where most of it's coming from?
So your drainage area, and when we research the drainage area, includes across with the west side.
Yeah.
All that comes through there, goes under the interstate, and still comes down that drainage channel behind I forget the name of it, Hidden Glen.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's options for expanding detention in that area that we presented before, or potentially trying to take and route the water behind the houses, near the soccer fields. Remember, with that one, we do have to acquire some kind of easement or property because there's not all those properties that back up to that soccer field. The city doesn't own something to route that and then come back into the natural drainage.
Right. But in the long run, is that something that really needs to be done to fix the problem?
In the long run, I mean, yes, for sure. If in order to alleviate anything more than probably a 1 year to a 2 year storm in that area, something bigger has to be done.
Right.
And I know we chose to go with this one because of the funding that you had already and to provide improvements on very minor storms. And so I think that it will provide on the minor storms. We got a few smaller rains and they seemed to get through there pretty good, but that big one just obviously didn't. I mean, it was too much water rushing through there. Even it was washing out sod, it was washing out silt fences. I mean, it was taking stuff and moving it.
So were any properties, any houses actually flooded in this storm? Or?
I was not reported of actual water. The only pictures in a house, I saw video and pictures with it up right next to a house. Yeah. I talked to a few residents when we were out there looking at, so some of the sod washed out. We were out looking to verify that the house where the 6x2 comes out, that we had the best head wall system for there. Talked to, I don't know his name now, and he said it got up to near his house, and we saw where some of the silt and debris that was in the water had settled further up in there. But I think it got out faster because I think a storm like that in the past had gotten into people's houses.
That's my next question. In your professional opinion, if you hadn't have done what was done, some of those houses would have probably been flooded. Is that
I can make a conjecture based on experience. I'm going based off of just somebody telling me 4 inches in an hour. And so I don't have records to show what storms they got in the past. If that's a great comparison, I can tell you on an engineering basis that water got out of that ditch into the downstream faster. So I do think there was some improvement. I do believe that if that 124 inch still had been at the end down there, that houses would have gotten water further or into their houses. And I think the biggest improvement y'all saw was there on Stagecoach Circle, the houses that the water used to come back through their backyard. That was like, there was still water there, but there wasn't much water there. Yes, that pipe is still there for overflow, and it gives but it didn't get into their houses that I was reported. Right. And I think it did go around and was very beneficial to those houses.
All right, Manny, what's the way ahead on this? Is there any FEMA grants or anything we can apply for to tackle it? Because the projects he's talking about now about expanding the retention ponds and regrading and redirecting water are $1 million projects.
Well, what Mr. Thomas stated clearly on the west side of I-35, if you don't create some type of retention in those areas and change those drainage standards over there to slow it down to mitigate it, because our current drainage plan doesn't really handle those kind of things in those developments. Not much different than Drake Landing, the retention pond we were talking about earlier in the week. So areas that are as slight as this, or if you don't control it where it's coming in and slow it down and mitigate that and change those requirements and development standards, you're going to continue. And as you get more development on the west side, it's going to get the water flow faster onto the east side.
Right.
So,
So what's the way ahead then?
There generally aren't these kind of grants for these type of flooding. You can apply for loans through the Texas Water Development Board, and that's what they promote, and there are those kinds. Sometimes you might get the grant for the study, but not for the construction. Studies, they're always kind of willing to help you out with. It plans for your long-term capital improvement planning.
Obviously, it's much better than it was.
The system, I believe, worked much better. Now, we sit here, I think one of our employees got some water, but I'm not sure if it was from water rising or if it was from damage to their property and water got in. I didn't get that clear, but again, I received no other reports other than I get reports that water came very close to coming in, but I get that all the time. But you might recall that Mr. Thomas some months ago, 2 months ago, indicated that based on the street and the area that we got to work in doesn't allow us to put any larger conveyance system. You're limited to the height of the roadway. And cities that do this, Mayor and Alderman, generally have to reconstruct the entire roadway along with the stormwater conveyance system. In other words, you drop it to make the roadways channel so it handles more capacity there. But you flood roadways intentionally so you don't flood homes. But those are costly. In aging communities, you see go through that, especially when they have the original neighborhoods that are experiencing more flooding than the newer subdivisions. They go back in and issue bonds for those.
Hey, Manny, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. So over on the west side, like the engineer said, it's kind of the problem starts there, comes east, right? Did you say that our current subdivision ordinances don't really tackle the stormwater runoff effectively enough?
Yeah, let me paraphrase, and Mr. Thomas can correct me. Your standards, you have drainage standards, but it allows the engineer that if he puts a seal, it says this will work. Mm-hmm. What it doesn't set is the minimum expectation that this is what you're going to meet, and you got to. Because the idea is that the city isn't going to approve plans, but you can't set minimum standards. So currently, if a developer says, this is my drainage plan, it's approved because he's on the hook for the 10 years or so that his license is, but the homeowner gets affected and you get phone calls.
Okay, so basically it sounds like to me that we need to relook our ordinances as it pertains to stormwater runoff. We need to tighten those standards because we understand that over here on the east side, the areas that we're talking about right now, we don't have a lot of room to do a lot of improvements. So if I'm hearing this correctly, what I think has to happen is it's a staff function in your court to work with planning and zoning and to work with our engineers and to get those subdivision ordinances up to a better standard so that we can tackle that problem on the west side so we can save the homes on the east side.
And we are, from the time that Mr. Thomas was presented 30 days ago or so, they're nearing completion of a recommendation for drainage standards. Drainage standards is a recommendation from the engineers. It's very technical. So it's one of those things that it's hard to take it to a group of lay people that understand those standards we have to count on our engineers, and if you trust the engineer that we have on staff, those are the standards we follow based on the language, and that was part of the concern that we had is from day one that I've been here, that we've had some drainage issues.
Correct, I remember you talking about that.
Yes, sir.
So the ball's moving,
It is moving.
but I think with this wake-up call that we just had, we might need to move that ball a little bit faster to make sure that those things are tight.
Yes, sir.
Because the west side's growing.
I agree with you, and we are.
Okay.
And my point is, I just don't want us to say, okay, we've got that one project done, and we've got the other culvert on Mill Creek Drive done, so let's call it a day and move on. That's only step one and step two and of several steps that we need to be thinking about. So, put your thinking cap on, Mr. Manning.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Solomon?
Make sure those numbers are good.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is, following the PowerPoint presentation, is the sales tax collection for the month of, this against Representative February. It's $54,682, and then you'll see preceding years for 2023 it's $53,467, and 2022 $42,334. So I have not received the information for the mixed beverage, which is why I didn't add it in there. So that's what I've got for that. Moving on to the next item, update on discussions with representatives from the firm of Jacobs pertaining to the wastewater treatment plant. I sent you the information on the CPI and the CI with the cap, so I think we are in agreement that we're going to amend it, go back to the original, it's negotiable, but it sets a cap. It is fair, the ECI is based on the labor standards and that, so it's kind of a good, and most cities have some type of, something that regulates the cap. So it seems equitable for both sides. They did not get it in time to me for this meeting. I've not seen it, so the idea was that it would be for the next meeting. So we were in agreement on that. Following up the update on the city map, I have sent you all the most current city limits and ETJ map, and also the city's zoning map. That went out this week, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to express any comments. The comments that I think you're going to hear in the future is why are there spots without zoning? So apparently there were annexations, no zoning applied. We had this conversation last week at the Planning and Zoning Commission. You do have a comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan kind of outlines, and that was done in 2019 and was adopted by the Board of Aldermen. So it kind of sets a lot of those requirements as how that land development is going to be in the area. So therefore, and in certain areas that have already developed, for example, let's say Waterbridge, that area. Well, that's a multi-family. It fits the definition. It's not going to be single family. It's not commercial. So therefore, even though it's not zoned, that's the zoning we use because that is the land use that's going in now. So sometime in the future, we will probably address these areas. That's why you're going to see some of those pockets in those zoning maps, but you have to keep in mind that there is a comprehensive plan in place. And when we revisit that in the future, we will also have proposed land use in the ETJ, and that'll give further anybody wanting to develop those areas what we think it's going to be. Remember, the governing body can always change those and update them, okay? But the map is it's complete. It has the most current petitions for ETJ removal from the city's ETJ. Those were reflective on there. If any were received or if any were filed at Bell County Clerk's Office and never presented to the Board of Aldermen, then it would be a recorded instrument there, and we won't come across it until something comes up on that property. ETJs it's accurate as far as the information that we have here. If there comes up anything like a title search or something, we'll see those, or somebody just skips us and does the 45-day default by just filing it. It is what it is. So we will see those, and it'll be updated pretty soon again, because even as of today, I received 4 more petitions from one family that owns parcels that all together. So at the next meeting, I'll have that presented, and sometime in the very near future, I will have those tracks removed also. So it should continue to be that way. Anytime we receive something, we will update that map. That's all I've got for you, and I can take any questions you might have.
Danny, what are we doing on our pothole repair program?
I did, I've already got one. I've got another that's already come out. I'm waiting on his, and then the third one's actually, I've got a lot of work. So out of those 3 contractors, and he will come out, and right now, a lot of cities and areas are having potholes done, so they're busy. I also had a conversation with our county commissioner, and at one time, they did stop the practice of having an interlocal agreement with cities about 10 years ago. They may be able to enter into an agreement if there's an emergency repair, right? A failure, sinkhole or something that we need them to come out and not have to go through procurement. But it will be only on those types of events. So again, I met with them this week. So, but it is something. And right now with the rain, it's very limited what you can do. So the idea is that during this month of April and May, we get those things behind us. So as soon as we get some dry weather, we can get on these roads. The idea is, as you saw that first proposal, and the lifespan is about 5-7 years, that we saw cut the areas, fix and stabilize that subs one time. We're going to hit them all at one time. I think that what you saw was almost 40,000. You're going to be close to that 50,000. Anything major. If I didn't send you the photos on Royal Street, between the 2 90-degree turns, there's a failure by a manhole. It's actually not a manhole, it's causing it looks like it's a washout. It's because of just water getting underneath there because there's a lack of drainage or any type of a swell that takes the water away from that area. So it's already too late. We can put the drainage in, but the road's compromised. So that's certainly going to take some repair. And it looks like there was a repair once there. I see the rectangular cutout. So it's a socket.
So if I'm hearing you right, going back to the original question, the projected expenses, again, you know what you know, you don't what you don't.
Yeah.
50 to 100?
Easily.
Easily?
Yes, sir.
And the only recourse we would have in terms of that would be either a loan or out of our general fund. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Because we're already tapped out on our street budget.
It is.
We're only 26% spent on our Parks Department budget, including 0 of 30,000 for capital overlays. So they haven't even tapped into that. My question would be, has the Parks Advisory Committee been asked to provide any improvement projects related to those funds?
Yes, sir. I met with them the second Tuesday of April, so a couple of weeks ago. And I did make that recommendation already, and that was actually made by one of you to me, and I presented that. I think maybe all the members, but maybe one was on the phone, were present. And we also discussed closing out Pace Park, and we discussed improvements that they wanted to make to Pace Park that didn't get into as part of this contract. So, and what I did was I volunteered to meet with them after hours on a weekend to kind of get an idea of what they wanted to do because most of them worked. So we did open that door, and I've not had any offers other than that we would, and we likely will, but I'm trying to wrap up Pace Park, get all of the canceled checks so we can get reimbursed. So we'll have some of that funding because we fronted those funds as part of the grant with the Texas Parks and Wildlife.
Okay, last budget question here. According to the profit and loss budget performance report, we are 75.97% of our projected expenses for the budget year, and that's with respect to the wastewater piece, the O&M of it, if you will. Based on your discussions with Jacobs and barring any acts of nature like we had with the freeze issue, of course that was negligence from the contractor on that as well, but do you anticipate us exceeding our forecasted expenses for the budget year? And again, you know, we're in the third quarter right now, and we're at 75, so we're on glide path. But if you expect us to exceed that, and if so, by about how much? Just roughly in terms of like $10,000 plus or minus.
Yeah, no, I think you're going to, we have an inspection, we have an annual comprehensive wastewater inspection on the 23rd of next week. Based on that, and based on what I know of the inspections, only one item concerns me. It's an item that I'm gonna see whether they identify it, and if it is, it's probably about a $25,000 repair. But it's not within, it's not the facility itself. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll see what TCEQ does. But if not, it's something I'm gonna have to address in the near future. Just because I know what those regulations are.
So that's not saying that we would exceed our forecasted expenses
will.
potentially, but we would stay within?
Yes.
Okay. Update questions on a couple of projects that we have going on. The mayor already addressed the street repair proposal. Stagecoach Circle and Chisholm Trail, we talked a little bit about it, but is the project on schedule for completion? Because we've got about roughly 30 days remaining based off of their anticipated 120 from when they started in January.
They have a date, a completion date, and if I recall, one of them was like 120 days, but then they'll get their rain dates. So as we get closer, they'll be able to justify what their rain dates are. A lot of times, it's getting the material, the inventory to the site. It's not, well, the workers aren't here. Sometimes it's weather, sometimes it's material. So that's what, and that is all across, when it comes to these type of public infrastructure repairs.
So what kind of contract do we have with them? Is it a firm fixed price? Is it time and materials?
No,
is it cost plus incentive?
Yeah, it's a firm price. Any change orders obviously changes that. Yeah. And then there are damages. They're respectable, but damages, you really have to go to prove certain that they're beyond those times. So generally, even with the rain days, they'll fall. It's going to fall within it.
Okay, so rain days notwithstanding, based off what you're talking about with the contract, we don't really have any penalties written in the contract for not adhering to the schedule, the part that they would be responsible for, do we?
That is correct. And there's two thoughts on liquidated damages. If you put that in your proposal, and the contractors all know that you're going to hit hard with liquidated damages, all the contractors are going to submit a higher contract price. That's why it's got to be something reasonable. They'll stay within that glide path, so to speak. But if you penalize too much, and we've seen this, you do it, they all know those numbers better than we know them, and they will all hit you much higher.
So you get what you pay for, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Water's edge runoff concerns. We've talked about it in the past, and inspection updates relative to that development. Do we know what the development's current PCD is, or estimated completion date?
No, sir. No, that I don't, and I try to look at the development agreement if there is, and generally, these things, no, they're not, and there isn't anything specific in there. And when we've had drainage concerns calls, and including two of you up there that have reached out to me that actually went on site and walked it. And as the city engineer indicated, I recall this week getting videos from two of you, emails from 4 of you. Those videos, those emails, everything gets forwarded. And I mean, it's done within the same day. When I get a concern from Water's Edge or anywhere else, and if it's the engineers or whomever it may be, they get dispatched fairly quickly. Our engineers go out, I get a report, and some of you have gone out, and we've had those discussions. So we look at these to see exactly, is it what it says it is, and is it working in accordance with the drainage plan? And Alderman, it is.
Okay. Couple of things on next steps, just to kind of give us a primer on those. Royal Street project, I know we did some work on it recently in terms of funding approvals for TxDOT stuff. Where are we in the project management piece of that?
The SPA, which is the oversight, the resolution you approved at the last meeting, that's been submitted along, that'll prepare the advanced funding agreement. They recently, and I think I copied the mayor because we talked to the TxDOT folks, because the SPA actually was rejected. And it was rejected because we didn't have enough projects. So, the person at the Waco office that I work on, and I'm working with two different individuals on three projects. The one person handling the Royal Streets got kicked back this week. They offered some assistance, how to correct it, made the corrections on this form, and I had to sign it. So just so that it, to keep the mayor informed, because they generally they address it to him, but by resolution I'm authorized to sign it. So we've corrected it. They said thank you. So I think we're going to be good. That will be moving forward. Williams Road and Mill Creek Drive went in probably about a month ago, and that's continuing to move forward. So somewhere along the way, we will get that advance funding agreement. Those lead days, and I know you've got a concern about the sidewalk on Williams Road.
Yeah, let's just get into that real quick. So the TIA and the implementation regarding Williams Road in coordination with the school district. Once that TIA is out and there's a plan to address anything that TIA finds, I mean, are we cutting our nose off to spite our face by doing the sidewalk in advance of anything that would come out of that TIA?
No, I think that you can delay it because they don't have kind of a date and a funding period. So it's one of those things. It's not, let's just kind of see how it plays out. And if not, we get a portion of it, and then we'll have a conversation with the school district about finishing the rest. So I've met with the school district. I did some research. Based on their improvements, they'll be required to go through some plating besides annexation. The TIA study was basically for FM 2484. I actually, and based on your email and based on that scope that I missed, and I'm thinking it's a text dot, I shouldn't be that concerned. But I realized, well, let me go look at our code of ordinances.
Yeah.
I found that our code of ordinances, or our ordinance, has a traffic impact analysis requirement. It's not as direct because it's like a 2009 ordinance, but it sets the standard because it's industry standards out there. So I did send an email that included TxDOT, school district superintendents, facility, the engineers, PBK, that says, hey, this traffic impact analysis, I don't have any comments on FM 2484, but I certainly have them on Williams Road. And because if there wasn't a TIA performed when the first schools went in, and this ordinance was already in place, that now to be inclusive. So my strong recommendation was that the TIA should encompass all of the new buildings, all the school facilities, and any development in close proximity to that area. And if you see what's going on in 2484, so today I had a conversation with the Belton Tech staff permitting coordinator for right-of-ways. He's concerned about what he's seeing on 2484. He's concerned about Event Drive in Williams. So I didn't realize that he was in that email thread that I sent out. And I think I worked at it like 5 in the morning. And so it was something that I had to ponder. I had to look at, do my research. So we'll see what the engineers submit, and we have our engineers to see if it meets, if those traffic counts were really, we're going to get a lot of data. And Solomon actually looked at the scope, found the section, and he said, this should address it. Well, should doesn't mean will. I very much made it clear what the expectation is, and that we're going to be wanting to look at that. Look, nobody wants to beat up the school district, and we need certainly to take care of the school district, but we certainly don't need 2484 in front of the QT where it narrows down. It's going to be dangerous for high school kids driving to that location. I purposely stay away from that area during school time when they're being dropped off and picked up. I mean, if I'm doing it, but not everybody does, and 2484 carries a lot of traffic. So we need to certainly look at what the TIA is for the tech spot, for our city, and make sure that it's a safe environment as it can be, meeting whatever those standards are going to be.
And to bring in the Williams Road piece as much as we're able to, because Jim Hodgson and I, when we were on planning and zoning a number of years ago and recommended approval for Eagle Heights, that was something that we expressed concern about. as that was elevated up through. And I don't know if the TIA was brought into that at that point in time with them or not, but
It would have been in the development agreement, and it was not in there. So
Yeah.
I suspect that because it wasn't included, it didn't happen because it's not on the file.
yeah. And then, so two more things and then I'll shut up. All right, so subdivision ordinance revision regarding workshop, regarding concerns generated from Drake's Landing's discussions last time. That was part of a motion that I put last go around, talking about approving that piece with follow-on discussions to establish a workshop regarding our subdivision ordinance revision. Have we put a mark on the calendar to deal or address with that
No.
yet?
And we can discuss that during the workshop or later in the budget process, because we're going to be coming up to those fairly quickly.
Okay,
Your subdivision ordinance and your zoning aren't the issue. The issue is the management of our assets and how we enforce our ordinances. These mirror a lot of other cities. We just haven't been requiring people follow them.
let's go back to that code enforcement piece that we had discussed in email a while back, right?
Yeah. Well, there's
To
a
some
difference.
extent.
Yeah. Well, there's a
Okay.
difference between code compliance and building
Yeah.
regulations. Now, let me tell you, and I had a conversation with the engineers. The engineers do plat review for us. They also do construction management. But there's not much difference between the village staff when people are on the front of the building, people are on the back of the building. If we don't communicate, we're missing the boat. Well, they weren't communicating because they were doing construction inspections, but not listing the other requirements in your own subdivision ordinance. So we had a conversation about that, and that will stop. They have to communicate, and we have to do a better job about what those requirements, and just hold people accountable to those subdivision standards. Those subdivision standards were here to protect you. I can't tell that they were always followed, or they were people pick what they wanted to follow and not follow.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say that our subdivision ordinance and our planning and zoning ordinance is sufficient, but we have not had really any teeth to them or any consistency in terms of enforcement, and that's what you're working on?
Yes, sir. And there's no interpretation. It's clearly stated what you must do. We just weren't doing it.
Yeah. And then last question, municipal building, what's next?
Well, what's next is if we continue to move forward, and I think that's kind of where we're at now. I did have a conversation with Commissioner Whitson about the septic system. He did give me how it was designed. So currently, they would like for us to be in a building that they because when that septic system was designed, it was designed as an event center with a lot of folks utilizing the facility.
Right.
Well, they don't have that kind of flow. So they actually have to flow water to keep that system operational. I mean, so therefore, us getting on that system will certainly help their system. Okay? So this secondary side, some of those things are rules that they have and certainly workable, because even though it's not two, and one of the concerns was there's two owners. Well, no, we don't own the land. They own the land. We just have the building on top of that land, but the ownership of the land is still there, so therefore it should be able to utilize that same system. So the same thing that we're having conversations about our own code of ordinances, or our own ordinances and regulations, they're having discussions between the public health department and the commissioners court, that sometimes some of these regulations are antiquated and they need to be revisited. So that's kind of what that's the discussion that I think that they're having. Again, we're not privy to those, but at least the concern was, no, it can, and we'll be able to use it, because the idea was, if we're working a lease agreement, what do we do? Or do I need to come back and report that we need to be revisiting it? So, so let's see what the public health folks do and their board of directors.
So we aren't even in a position where we can fairly say we're 6 months from breaking ground
No, sir.
Or even a year from breaking
No,
ground?
you'll be within the year. Yeah, you'll be, I would anticipate that by the end of the year, you'll be advertising, starting construction. It's a good time, sometime in March, April. So you'll bid it out, get it all ready, and by that time, we should be under construction.
Thought.
Let me ask you a question. I know that the village left a lot of money on the table with new development, it seems. Do you have any idea how much?
No, sir, look, a lot of those decisions were made by a Board of Aldermen. Whatever the reasoning was, it was for them to determine, just like you six get to determine. It would not have been my recommendation based on just going back and looking at the budget, right? But sometimes you want to bring, sometimes you compromise, because I'll give this because I'm getting more rooftops, right? But at what's the cost, right? So I don't know those kind of analysis and what those long terms are. But again, it is very difficult to be critical of any other governing board other than that's probably not a good practice and we probably shouldn't continue it.
That's what I was going to ask. I think we don't have to give those things away anymore.
No, sir. No, and I think I said that in the past, giving incentives to residential units is not a trend, right? That's why you let them do PIDs or other things that you let them bear that burden, right? It should not be a burden on the taxpayer. But incentives are other things, and unless they really, now, incentives on mixed-use developments for something that brings in sales tax, mixed beverage, retail, well, all of those kinds, and even if it's a mix, those are acceptable as long as the return is better than what you're paying on. But services to residents, there's a dollar amount, there's an industry standard. Services to apartments, right? And depending on those type of apartments, what type of demographics it has, can cost you more in services. For example, a lot of services for fire calls, code compliance, police calls. So those costs run up. So it's just going to depend on the demographics of your community. And we have, for the most part, a fairly, it's not, the issues are not really in the single family residential areas, it's in other areas.
Manny, on the Jacobson contract, you mentioned the cap is using the Department of Labor.
It's going to be, they're going to, it's the CPI and the ECI, accommodations. It's whatever that percentage for that year, and they'll have a cap. So
so it is going to be a CPI-based type cap.
Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir, it is. And again, if you have any objection, I really need to know kind of exactly what it is. But based on that, a lot of times you just see strictly CPI, but because this is a labor-driven, and you've got operators certified, we have difficulty filling roles. They have difficulty finding people with certifications, so they have to pay more to be able to provide those services. Well, they pass those costs on because it's to hire certified wastewater operators at a certain level in competency. So it's labor market driven.
All right, any other questions to Mr. Manning? Item number 5A is discuss and consider possible action to approve a request to close Royal Street on October the 19th, 2024 from 7:45 a.m. to 8:45 a.m. for the Volks Ride and the Volks March event, as requested by Ms. Katie Hill with Barrel Brewing Company and Ms. Berta Davis.
I think Mrs. Hill in the room, if she will step up, she can answer any questions about this event.
Hi. Do you have any questions for me?
Can you sort of explain how the outage is going to work and where it's going to be and all that stuff?
Sure. So this will be the 5th year that we've hosted the Volks Ride fundraiser for the volunteer fire department. And we've seen with the growth of the bicycle ride that it's really necessary to have some control of Royal Street. and block it off with the village's help for about an hour. It'll probably be a little bit less than an hour. The bicyclists take off at 8 a.m. and prior to that start, they are staging, and they like to stage on the road where it's that good solid surface. And so it's just dangerous to have cars right prior to the start, to have cars nearby. The Volksride had around 400 riders last year, and we keep shooting for that 500 mark. So we've been really fortunate to have the volunteer fire department helping us with traffic control throughout the county. This ride goes as far away as Nolanville to Holland. It's a huge undertaking. Our race director is Berta Davis, and she has just gone above and beyond keeping everything organized and safe. So your help closing down Royal Street for just up to that 1 hour would be really helpful. This year we're also launching the Volks March 5K. So we wanted to provide a way for people that don't cycle to participate in this Oktoberfest themed day. We had great success with our St. Patrick's Day themed 5K, and we think this is another great way to get people into Salado. We've seen over the last 4 years for the Volksride, hotel rooms are booked, and the hotels have given us our cyclist discount rates. So that's another great partnership. And they come in on Friday night. They spend all day Saturday here. I think it's a really good thing for town, and I appreciate your help again.
All right, so Chief, you good with this? All right, y'all are going to provide the support, flashing lights and all that business? All right, thank you, sir. Any other questions, Ms. Hill?
This is a new requirement based off of volume of participants. We didn't do this last year.
We did do this last year, yes.
Okay, so this is just basically Brent cycle repeat.
Yes.
Got it.
Any other questions?
One for Manny. We don't have anything going on with Royal Street construction during that time frame, do we?
No, sir.
Projected?
No.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Hill. Would anybody care to present a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the request as presented.
A motion to approve by Alderman Cox, second by Alderman Henry. Any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called by Alderman Graham. All in favor of approving the street outage as presented, say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. It carries 5-0. Item 5B is the first reading of ordinance number 2024-02, an ordinance of the Village of Salado, Texas, providing for the installation of stop signs at the intersection of Smith Bluff Road and Smith Bluff Way, creating an all-way stop and including the following findings of fact: effective date, repealer, severability clause, and proper notice and meeting. Mr. Manning?
Okay, Mayor and Alderman, as we discussed here in the last couple of times, when we received the request for speed hump, and it was decided now, but that we would look at other alternative means. So the stop signs were requested at Smith Bluff Road at Smith Bluff Way. Those have already gone in. We put flags up to kind of warn people that you're coming up on the stop signs, and we've also installed the rumble strips. So the ordinance, this is the first reading, and at the next meeting it'll be there for second and final reading for approval. But so if anybody has stopped at that intersection, they're getting warnings, right? So we think it's and we would do that anyway, but we certainly pointed it out. Somebody made a request that we were going to put flashing lights or something on it. I think that would be inappropriate for that type of use. Because once you start somewhere, it's now if it was somewhere near a school or something, and more commercialized, maybe it's a different discussion. But in an area like that, I think this is adequate. But not only did we install the stop signs and some red flags up on it, we've also installed the 30-mile-an-hour speed sign. And but that's a whole nother topic if we're going to reduce that. And we will be working on an ordinance to present to you, because the chief has had conversations with TxDOT. Anything other than Main Street can be reduced down to whatever speed be determined by ordinance. So, and we need to kind of decide the area, and I'm talking about the residential area on the east side of I-35, that maybe we should consider dropping it down from 30 down to 25. I think the chief said 20, but I think that was his preference. But again, you'll get to decide that as we prepare a map outlining the areas, so it'll be part of the exhibit for an ordinance for your consideration.
All right, that's the first reading. Any questions of Mr. Manning? Anybody care to present a motion?
There's no
Let's
action.
see.
No action.
No motion on it. Okay. I'd like to take this. Would anybody care to approach the podium and make comment on this item? Wait. It's not your turn. This is the public. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Go into discussion, Alderman Cox.
Yeah, I just want to say that I live past there. I come to town every day that way, and I've gone through that intersection 3 times now, and I think it's going to be a big improvement with speed along that along Smith Bluff Road. So, and it doesn't really surprise you when you come around. You have plenty of room to see it before as you come around from up the hill on Winter Circle. So, I'm very happy the way it turns out.
Any other discussion? All right. Moving on to item 5C is the first reading of ordinance number 2024-03, an ordinance of the Village of Salado, Texas, granting Mustang Springs Utility LLC certain powers and licenses, privileges, and franchise to operate and maintain a water utility system within the village, to use the streets, avenues, easements, right-of-ways, alleys, highways, sidewalks, and bridges in said village, and prescribing certain rights, duties, terms, and conditions, providing for the payment to the village of a percentage of its total billed water usage, and providing for acceptance, and providing for certain related matters. Mr. Manning.
Mayor and Alderman, the franchise agreement ordinance is before you. It is the legal counsel for the developer utilized the Salado Water Supply Corporation's franchise agreement with the village as a template. So it's got a few, very few changes, and it's actually stricter than the one that we have with the Salado Water Supply Corporation. The percentages, the franchise fees, 4%, similar to what it is with the Salado Water Supply. There was, I've already sent this out to you. Both sides, both legal, counsels for the city and for the developer have reviewed this, agreed to this agreement. There was a recommendation made by Mr. Charles Simmons yesterday, and the day before yesterday, and I forwarded that suggestion. It was just changing a couple of words. It didn't change anything substantially. And the city attorney said, yeah, it seems okay. I'm going to make that change. So I'll let the developer know that we made 1 or 2 word changes within the document. But again, it doesn't change the overall. It's just slightly different. So I want to thank Mr. Simmons for that recommendation. And this is your first reading, and I'll take any questions now.
All right, any questions for Mr. Manning?
And Manny, as you said, this is the first reading for Mustang Springs in reference to this.
Yes, sir.
So this is day 1 for the BOA to address this item.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. How long has Ms. Kennedy been asking Mustang Springs to make a correction?
Mrs. Kennedy, well, I saw, I don't know when the hearing was, but I anticipate it was sometime in February. The information that I sent you today shows the February 29th date when they started. We're 2 months into this, so.
For 2 months.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Manning?
Danny, so the term of this is for 5 years with a renewal of 5 years. After that term and renewal, after 10 years, are they still required to pay a franchise fee after that? I mean, we have to, it's almost in
Yeah.
perpetual, right?
Once they
So-
started, it's kind of perpetual, whether the agreement is in full force or whether it's expired. So,
So the only negotiating piece to this after the 10 years, is, if at all, would be 4%.
yes, sir.
for the
Yeah.
most part, right?
It could be negotiated if the industry standards that they're higher, right? But you can't treat one water supply corporation differently than
Right.
another within the same jurisdiction. I mean, you're gonna have to explain that, so. And again, when you start looking at just besides your outside of your jurisdiction, it's at the industry standard, and it tends to be, so. But, yeah, there are, if it gets expired, say they don't renew it or you fail to reach an agreement, well, sometimes it's just, maybe there should be language that it can, even if it expires and you don't reach in good faith an agreement, that it continues for a certain period of time. Maybe that would be something you might want me to put in, because it does happen. So water supply corporations agreements do expire. And sometimes cities and water supplies don't renegotiate them, and you still collect the franchise fee. It doesn't take away the right that they have certain, that the water supply corporation, which is a nonprofit, has infrastructure in your right of way, just like any other utility company got in your right of way.
And this in no way is insinuating that we're approving the water company, just that we're gonna collect a franchise fee when they are approved for water,
That is correct.
because we don't approve for water, correct?
You know, no, we don't.
Who will approve for water?
They have approached the Clearwater Underground Water Conservation District for permits, and they have permits to drill 2 wells, and based on the conversations I had today, they're proceeding on track.
So if they sell the company down the road somewhere, which they can, the water company.
Yeah, the water company is a nonprofit, it can sell it
Yeah,
to the
they
water.
can sell it to whatever, to the village or somebody else. That transfers to, we still get the franchise.
Yes,
who.
yeah, well, I don't think it discusses that, but yeah, the company can be sold and you can buy all rights, right? So if you can test it, you'll be in the courthouse.
Right.
You're not gonna shut off people's water, so it's
No.
kind of one of those things, once you've approved it, you're in it for perpetually.
Any other questions, Mr. Manning?
Man, can you just clarify, I've gotten quite a few phone calls over the last week, or since, I guess, Friday, whenever our website, when it was posted. There's a lot of uncertainty and misconception about what this is and what this is not. People think that saying the wording being Village of Salado means that we're giving them rights to our roads over here on the east side of the interstate and all that. Discussions I've had said no, it only pertains out there to Mustang Springs and another 100-acre tract out there. And it enables them to access 2843 and I-35 and all that. Can you just speak to that?
No, they will generally file their certificate area within the area. Here's why you don't really put a certificate area outside of your jurisdiction. So Mustang Springs would not want to include a water certificate of convenience and necessity, commonly referred to as a CCN, outside of their planned development. And the reason being is, if they put it outside, then they're obligated to have others connect to it. So they're going to be very protective of that, their area only, and not have to be. It's not very different than our certificate area for our sewer CCN. It follows, for the most part, our footprint of our city. If you extend it in other places, then you're obligated to have to let them connect to it. So you lose certain leverages by, if you want to annex, if you want our sewer, you annex. and that's how you bring them in. So, so the best business model is you keep it to your footprint. They are in Georgetown's utility system certificate area, not in the Salado Water Supply Corporation, CCN. So they're gonna have to get Georgetown to remove them, or they're gonna file for an overlapping certificate area, and they can't. CCQ allows it, and so does the Public Utilities Commission of Texas. So, but they are not gonna be crossing anywhere else. They're staying within their property. So, and, you know, I need to let you know, the conversations I have with other landowners, a couple of 100 acres at a time, they're going to create their own water, they're going to get their own wells, and they're going to create their own either a mud, because they're out in the ECJ, if they connect to us, they're going to create their own water supplies because they know what they can do, and they're not going to be held up by anyone. These investors that are buying these properties are going to develop their properties, and they're going to drill into the aquifers.
This
And
doesn't give them the ability to sell to neighboring properties.
it does not. They are going in as a you know, retailer. They're not doing wholesale.
Any other questions, Mr. Manning? All right, that completes the first reading of item C. Moving on to item number 6 is executive session. A, sections 55.074 personnel matters, closed meeting, deliberate the employment, evaluation of a public officer or employee.